After my grandpa's funeral, the man who built a $200 million textile empire from nothing, I stepped into the CEO's office, only to find my younger sister already sitting in his chair. She didn't look up when she said, "I'm the CEO now. If you don't like it, you can leave." I stared at her, then burst out laughing. Because my sister was the one person who should have never betrayed me. She just had no idea what I was about to do next. I still remember the way the air felt that morning. Thick with silence, not grief. Maybe I had already braced myself for it. My grandfather, James Moore, the man who raised me and my sister Lily after our parents died, was gone. A stroke had taken him in his sleep, just a few weeks after my last call to him from New York. I had meant to visit. I always meant to visit. But between meetings, client dinners, and pitch decks, time slipped past me like water through a sieve. He built more textiles from the ground up. What started as a small factory in Charlotte turned into a national name in fashion and interior fabrics. His story was legendary in business circles, hardworking, shrewd, disciplined. But to me, he was just the man who made pancakes on Sundays and gave stern lectures about earning your place in this world. He never gave away praise freely. You had to prove yourself. I had been doing just that for years. After earning my MBA, I carved out my own place in New York's competitive finance world. I worked at top firms, managing textile accounts that ironically competed with my grandfather's own company. But deep down, I knew I was preparing myself to return. Not for his sake, for mine. I always believed that one day I would lead more textiles. The funeral was quiet, elegant, and cold, just like our family. I returned to Charlotte, walked into our estate for the first time in years, and found it unchanged. Lily was already there. She looked different, softer somehow. Her long dark hair was curled neatly, and her dress was more designer than boutique made. But her eyes held that same uncertainty I remembered from childhood. We were never close. Lily had always stayed in Charlotte, working on her boutique and floating in and out of our grandfather's orbit. She was the creative one. I was the driven one. He respected me. He pitied her. After the funeral, we were called to the lawyer's office for the will reading. I sat beside Lily in silence, watching her tap her nails against the armrest. She was nervous. I wasn't. I had spent years preparing for this moment. Then came the surprise. To my granddaughters, Abigail and Lily Moore, the lawyer read, "I leave joint ownership of Moore Textiles. All major decisions must be agreed upon by both parties. This is to ensure cooperation, family unity, and mutual responsibility." My mouth went dry. Lily's eyebrows shot up. Equal? Joint control? I didn't say anything, not then. I just sat back and swallowed it like a bitter pill. James must have thought this would bring us together. But he didn't know what Lily had become. Or maybe I didn't. I moved back into the family estate, took over my old room, and stepped into the office at Moore Textiles like it had always been waiting for me. The staff welcomed me respectfully. Some remembered me from when I interned during college. I met with the board, reviewed financials, and began reorganizing departments to improve efficiency. I thought if I worked hard and included Lily in decisions, she'd respect that I knew what I was doing. She showed up to meetings late. Sometimes not at all. When she did, she'd sit quietly or ask questions that made it clear she hadn't read the reports. I tried to be patient. I tried to bring her into discussions, offered her small but meaningful projects. But she resisted. Or maybe she was playing a different game entirely. The first sign something was wrong came when my access to the internal accounting system was suddenly blocked. IT called it a glitch. 2 days later, my assistant quit without explanation. Then one afternoon, I walked into the CEO's office for a board meeting and found Lily already there, sitting in the CEO's chair. She was calm, her makeup flawless. Daniel White stood behind her, arms folded, suit crisp. That's when I felt the ground begin to shift. Daniel, my ex. I hadn't seen him in years. We met in law school but broke up after I caught him lying, more than once. His charm had always been a mask. What the hell was he doing here? "Abigail," Lily said, her voice steady but cold. The board has reviewed the documents, and I'm afraid we've come to a decision. Effective immediately, you're being removed from executive leadership. I blinked. What? Daniel stepped forward. We have evidence of financial mismanagement and internal policy violations. The board has voted. These documents outline the decision. You're no longer authorized to represent more textiles in any official capacity. Are you serious? I said, taking the file he handed me. The papers were detailed, too detailed. Forged. I looked at Lily. She couldn't meet my eyes. Security was called. They didn't touch me, but they escorted me to the elevator. Not a single board member spoke. I drove home in silence. My phone buzzed endlessly, emails, calendar cancellations, bank notifications. I was being erased in real time. That night, I sat in my room and stared at the ceiling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed. It was betrayal, raw and personal. But it wasn't the end. Because if there was one thing I had learned in New York, it was how to rebuild from zero. How to use silence as a strategy. How to plan a comeback so precise it cuts deeper than any knife. And Lily, poor naive Lily, had no idea who she'd just crossed. She had Daniel. But I had something better. Time. And a very long memory. The days that followed felt like slow-motion chaos. I watched from the sidelines as my name disappeared from More Textiles' website, my email account was deactivated, and word spread like wildfire through the industry that I had been let go. People I once called colleagues went silent. Others reached out privately, confused, cautious. No one wanted to be caught in the crossfire, especially not in a company as old and proud as ours. I didn't leave Charlotte. That's what Lily and Daniel expected, that I'd pack my bags and go crawling back to New York in disgrace. But I wasn't going anywhere. I'd grown up here. My memories were soaked into every corner of the city, from the cracked sidewalk outside my grandfather's first factory to the hill where he used to sit me and Lily down with ice cream cones and talk about legacy. No, this was personal. And I wasn't done. For the first week, I stayed silent. I let them think they'd won. While they paraded Lily around in press releases and new branding announcements, I watched from a distance. I knew how their minds worked. Daniel was calculated, manipulative. He'd been good at making people believe whatever version of reality benefited him. Lily, though, wasn't like that. She was impulsive, emotional. She trusted too easily, especially men who told her she was smarter than the world thought. I wasn't angry at her yet. I should have been. But mostly I was stunned. She was my sister. We'd shared everything as children, grief, rooms, clothes. After our parents died, she used to sneak into my bed at night because she couldn't sleep alone. Now she had turned on me with legal papers and fake allegations. Still, I didn't waste energy on confusion. I got to work. The first thing I did was call Nadia, a close friend from my MBA days who now ran a VC firm in Atlanta. She answered immediately. Abby, she said, I heard. Is it true? Not a word of it, I replied. But I'm not here to talk about that. I want to build something. Something better. Are you in? There was a pause. Then she said, tell me what you need. I didn't just want a company. I wanted a symbol. So I named it Eclipse Fabrics. A clean, modern, sustainable textile brand that would represent the future. I wanted to do everything my grandfather never allowed. Experimental materials, eco-friendly production, AI-powered inventory control. The opposite of old money tradition. This would be smart, fast, and unstoppable. Within a month, I had office space in a startup incubator on the east side of town, a 3-person team working around the clock, and a quiet list of former More Textiles clients who had reached out to me discreetly. They had concerns about the new direction under Lily's leadership. One even said, we trusted the More name because of you. By the second month, we signed 3 contracts. They weren't huge, but they gave us traction. Enough to put pressure on More Textiles from the outside. I wasn't trying to destroy the company my grandfather built, but I was going to make sure it wasn't run into the ground by people who had no right to it. I kept tabs on Lily. Public records, social media, quiet messages through mutual contacts. Things were starting to slip. delayed shipments, layoffs. One supplier filed a complaint, then another. I knew the signs. Daniel was draining them. The Lily I grew up with wouldn't have known how to read a balance sheet. She designed window displays and picked out swatches. And now she was acting CEO? No. Daniel was in control. He always had been. And I knew exactly why he was doing it. Revenge. When I ended things with him all those years ago, I didn't just break his heart, I embarrassed him. Publicly. I called him out for cheating at a corporate party in front of his colleagues. He never forgot that. And now he was using my sister to settle an old score. One night, maybe 6 weeks in, I was working late in the Eclipse office when I saw her name pop up on my phone. Lily. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. It rang out. Then another message. Can we talk? I didn't respond. I wanted to believe there was guilt in her voice. That maybe she was starting to realize the weight of what she'd done. But it wasn't time yet. Not until she saw the full cost. A week later, I met with a former MORE executive, someone who had resigned quietly after the leadership change. He handed me a flash drive. You didn't hear this from me, he said, but they're covering up internal losses. Daniel's pulling funds into offshore accounts under dummy contracts. I nodded, slipped the drive into my bag. Thank you, I said. You did the right thing. Every detail was documented. Every transfer, every forged signature. I could have gone to the authorities, to the press, to the board. But that would have been easy. I wanted her to come to me. And she did. It was a rainy Thursday when I saw her standing in front of the cafe where I had agreed to meet. She looked different again, tired, thinner, smaller somehow. Her umbrella shook slightly in the wind. I walked up slowly, let her see me before I spoke. Hi, she said. Lily. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then, I didn't know. About the money. About what Daniel was doing. I didn't nod. I didn't comfort her. I thought he was helping me, she whispered. He said you would have taken everything. He was helping himself, I said coldly. Tears welled up in her eyes. I'm sorry. You chose him over me, I said. You believed lies over your own sister. She lowered her gaze. I was wrong. I know that now. I watched her. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to hug her. But the fire inside me had changed shape. It was no longer rage. It was control. What do you want, Lily? She looked up, hope flickering. A second chance. We can work together. We can rebuild. I smiled just a little. You can work for me. Her face fell. What? I'll hire you, I said. As an assistant. That's what I can offer. She blinked, stunned. I waited. Eventually she nodded. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about power. And I had it. I didn't enjoy it despite what people might think. Watching Lily sit across from me in my office that first morning, eyes downcast, dressed in quiet colors instead of her usual flashy prints, it didn't make me feel triumphant. It made me feel tired. She accepted the assistant position without a fight. Maybe because she had nowhere else to go. After Daniel vanished, she was left with debt, lawsuits, and a shattered reputation. MORE Textiles was spiraling, and the board had quietly replaced her without public explanation. She'd gone from CEO to nobody in a matter of weeks. I knew what that felt like. Still, I couldn't forget what she'd done. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a decision. A choice she made over and over again while Daniel spun his web around her. And she never once warned me. Never once gave me the benefit of the doubt. That truth burned deep. But I kept things professional. I gave her tasks. Simple ones at first, scheduling meetings, taking notes, organizing files. She did them with quiet efficiency, never complaining. I watched her carefully. Not because I didn't trust her, well, that too, but because I was trying to understand what kind of person she'd become. And maybe if there was anything left of a sister, I once knew. Eclipse Fabrics, meanwhile, was thriving. We'd secured a major contract with a national home decor brand and were preparing to launch our first exclusive fabric line. Clients were reaching out faster than we could handle. Investors were circling. The media had started calling us the future of American textiles. And MORE Textiles? I barely needed to keep tabs anymore. Lily had unknowingly left the house of cards exposed. The company's reputation had taken hit after hit. Clients were pulling out. A lawsuit had been filed by one of the former suppliers Daniel scammed, and internal documents had begun leaking. It wasn't sabotage. It was simply a natural collapse, accelerated by greed, powered by neglect. One afternoon, I stayed late in the office. Most of the team had already left. The floor was quiet. I sat alone, looking over the final mock-ups for our new eco-blend material when I heard the knock on my door. It was Lily. She stood in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee she'd made for me. I didn't ask for it. I never did. I know you don't trust me, she said quietly. I looked up. That's correct. She stepped inside. I just wanted to say, I'm not trying to win you over. I'm just trying to fix what I broke. I said nothing, just stared at the cup. She placed it on the desk and turned to leave. I was jealous of you, she said, her back still to me. Always was. You were everything he respected. The smart one. The one with plans. He never saw me as capable. I didn't respond. I couldn't. She looked over her shoulder. When Daniel started filling my head with ideas, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to matter. And I was so angry at how easily people listen to you. But I didn't realize I was letting him speak for me, just like I always let others. Her voice cracked a little, but she held it together. I waited until she left before I touched the coffee. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of Lily's confession, but because of how much it reminded me of the girl I once shared a room with. We'd been through so much. Orphans, struggling to make sense of a world that kept shifting beneath our feet. Maybe she wasn't just jealous. Maybe she was lost. And maybe I had never reached for her the way I should have. But no matter how much I softened, I couldn't let her back in fully. Trust once broken doesn't just heal. It rebuilds, one piece at a time, if ever. A week later, we hosted our first showcase event for Eclipse. Investors, designers, and media personalities gathered in a sleek gallery space downtown. The walls were draped in our fabric lines, the air buzzing with curiosity and opportunity. This was the moment I had been building toward, not just revenge, but rebirth. I stood on the small stage, lights warm on my face, and told the story of Eclipse. Not of betrayal or downfall, but of evolution. Of a vision for a cleaner, smarter textile industry. I didn't mention Lily. I didn't mention Daniel. I didn't need to. Their absence was its own echo. After the applause died down, Lily approached me near the back of the gallery. You did it, she said quietly. We did it, I replied, more from instinct than belief. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm thinking of leaving, she said. Charlotte, I need time to figure out who I am. Away from all this. I nodded. Probably a good idea. I want to pay you back, she added. All of it. What you paid for my debt. The apartment. The job. You don't owe me money, Lily, I said. You owe me honesty. You owe yourself the truth. She looked away, and I knew she understood. 2 days later, she left. She didn't say goodbye. Just an email on my desk, thanking me and apologizing again. I sat alone in my office after reading it, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I had won. I had everything I came back for, my own company, my reputation restored, the industry's respect. And yet, it didn't feel like victory. Not completely. Because there was a piece of me still sitting on that childhood bed, next to a girl with tear-streaked cheeks, whispering stories under the covers to drown out the dark. That piece had been broken. And maybe that was the price of becoming who I am. Months passed. Seasons changed. Charlotte moved on, and so did I. Eclipse Fabrics had grown faster than I imagined. What started as a tiny operation in a borrowed office space had become a recognized name in the industry. We were expanding into 3 new markets, hiring aggressively and getting calls from international buyers. I was invited to speak at conferences, panels, even a university business class. They called me the face of modern textile innovation. I never said it out loud, but I knew what I really was. The woman who rose from betrayal and built something that could never be taken from her again. Yet even then, a part of me always stayed alert, quiet, guarded, like there was still one move left in the game. I hadn't heard from Lily since she left. No emails, no phone calls, not even through mutual friends. I thought maybe that was her way of preserving the last shred of dignity we had between us. Distance. A clean break. I respected that. But a part of me still wondered where she was, what she was doing, and whether she had finally found something that was hers alone. Then one rainy morning, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photograph, a fabric sample, and a short, handwritten note. I designed this myself. I'm starting again, small. Just wanted you to know I finally figured out who I am without anyone else's voice in my head. Thank you for everything, even the hard parts. Al. I stared at that note for a long time. The fabric was delicate, handwoven, nothing like what we produced at Eclipse. But it was beautiful. There was a simplicity in it that felt like healing. I didn't cry, but I let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I kept the fabric in my drawer. That same week, I was invited to an event recognizing women entrepreneurs in North Carolina. I walked onto the stage in front of a crowd that had no idea what it took for me to get there. They didn't know the nights I stared at the ceiling, wondering how my own sister could sign my name off a company our grandfather built. They didn't know how many times I nearly gave up in those first few months, scraping for office supplies and clients, pretending I wasn't falling apart inside. But I had made it. And not because I was the smartest or the fastest. I made it because I refused to let betrayal be the end of my story. During my speech, I didn't mention names. I just spoke about trust, how fragile it is, how quickly it can break, and how powerful it becomes when it's earned back the hard way. I talked about pain, about ambition, about love, even when it disappoints you. After the event, a woman in the crowd came up to me. She was young, barely in her 20s, eyes wide with questions. "How did you know you were ready to forgive?" she asked softly. I smiled, but there was no easy answer. "I don't know that I did," I said. "I just knew I couldn't carry the anger forever. It was too heavy. Forgiving her wasn't about her. It was about setting myself free." She nodded, and I saw something shift in her face. Maybe she was carrying something too. On the drive home, I passed by the old Moore Textiles building. It had a new sign now. Some real estate firm had bought the space. The windows were dark. The old stone letters had been taken down. It felt strange, like looking at the skeleton of a life I no longer lived. But I didn't feel sad. That building held memories, yes, some good, many painful, but it no longer held me. I had become someone new. Not just a CEO, or a survivor, or even a success story. I was Abigail Moore, the girl who had been betrayed, left behind, underestimated, and who rose through all of it. Daniel White was never found. Rumors said he moved to Europe. Others claimed he changed his name and started over somewhere far away. It didn't matter. He was a ghost in my past, one I no longer feared. And Lily? I hoped she was well. I hoped the fabric she sent was just the beginning. Maybe one day we'd sit across from each other, not as rivals or enemies, but as two women who lived through the fire and made something real from the ashes. But that day hadn't come yet. For now, I focused on what I had. My company, my people, my name. That's what betrayal taught me, that even when the people closest to you turn their backs, you can still choose who you want to become. You can still rise. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't about payback. It's about peace. It's about building a life so strong, so sure, that nothing broken from the past can shake it again.